Hello everyone, and happy snow day. My teacher, Rabbi Chaim Ilson, once, told us a story about a yeshiva student somewhere in a small shtetl in Russia who woke up one morning to a frigid, snowy Russian morning, and he was tempted to stay indoors and not take on the elements. And then, right as he was about to head back into bed, he looked outside his window and he saw a group of Russian soldiers walking through the town, trudging through the snow, and he said to himself, if these soldiers can walk through the frigid weather and the snow for the sake of the Tsar, for the sake of the ruler of Russia, all the more so, I'm going to go to yeshiva to learn Torah for the sake of the King of Kings. What I can tell you is if you do look outside and find a group of Russian soldiers, I would probably recommend that you stay indoors, but certainly we can take this snow day when many of us are holed up inside to learn some Torah, and perhaps learn some Torah in a different way than we normally would. The snow reminded me of the story in Maseches Yoma about Hillel. And if you'd like to follow along, it's in Maseches Yoma, Daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis, 35b, line 20, where the Gemara tells the story, Amru alav al Hillel hazaken shebechol yom vayom haya ose umistaker betrepik. He would, every day, Hillel would go to work, and he would make a very, very small amount of money. Chetzio haya nosein l'shomer beis hamedrash, vechetzio leparnasaso ulefarnasas anshe beiso. He would, of that tiny amount of money that he would make, he would give half to be allowed into the beis medrash, and half he would go to support his family. Pam achas lo matzah lihistaker v'lo hinicho shomer beis hamedrash lihikanes. So one day he was not allowed into the beis medrash. He didn't have enough money. Interesting that they charged to get in, but that's a separate question. And so he didn't have enough money. What did he do? Allah v'nitla v'yashav al pi aruba kedei sheyishma divrei elokim chayim mipi shemaya ve'avtalion. He went to the roof of the beis medrash so that he would be able to overhear divrei elokim chayim, the words of the living God that were being taught by the elders Shmaya and Avtalion. Amru, the students who were recalling the story, said, Oso hayom erev Shabbos haya utkufas teves hayasa v'yarad alav sheleg min hashamayim. That day was Friday, and that day was also the middle of the winter, and yarad alav sheleg min hashamayim. Snow from the sky, from the heavens, fell down on him. He's sitting there on the roof. Kishe'ola amud hashachar Amar lo shmayav le'avtalion. Avtalion achi b'chol yom habayis meir v'hayom afel. When the sun came up in the morning, when it was morning and it still wasn't light in the beis medrash, so Shmaya said to Avtalion, he said, why isn't it light inside? Usually it gets light at this time of day. Shema yom ha'me'unanhu, maybe it's cloudy outside. But, says the Gemara, hitzitzu einehen v'ra'u dumus adam ba'aruba. They looked outside and they saw a figure of a man up on the chimney and on the roof. Alu matzu alav rum shalosh amos sheleg. They found that he was covered in a tremendous amount of snow. Parkuhu v'hirchitzuhu v'sikuhu v'hoshivu keneged hamidura. Despite the fact that it was Shabbos, they took off the snow and they washed him, and they anointed him, and they put him next to the fire, all of these things which normally one would not be allowed to do on Shabbos, except that here was a case of danger. And Amru, the students who saw this, said, Ra'ui zeh l'chalel alav es haShabbos. They said that this such a person was worthy for the desecration of the Shabbos. Now, when we look through the story, there are a few questions that come to mind. First of all, just a couple of the phrases that the Gemara uses seem a little bit strange. Number one is it says that Hillel went up to the roof to listen to Divrei Elokim Chaim, the words of the living God. We've heard this phrase before, but it's normally not used in the Gemara. Why doesn't it just say that he went up to learn Torah, which would be the normal phrase that would be used in such a case? Secondly, the Gemara says that Yarad alav sheleg min hashamayim. The Gemara says that the snow came down from the heavens. I don't think any of us have seen snow come from any other place. So why does the Gemara say specifically that the snow came down from the heavens. And thirdly, the last question I wanted to ask was, the Gemara ends off the story how the student said, Ra'ui zeh lechalel alav es haShabbos, that this person is worthy for the desecration of Shabbos. We know that in any life-threatening situation, which Hillel was certainly in, any person would warrant the desecration of Shabbos. So why did they say specifically that Hillel warrants the desecration of Shabbos? And I believe that the Gemara certainly is teaching us a story of self-sacrifice for the study of Torah. And when the students said at the end, Ra'ui zeh lechalel alav es haShabbos, they weren't excluding anyone else, but they were merely they were proclaiming and they were articulating the lesson of self-sacrifice that they had learned from Hillel. It was sort of an exaggeration what they were expressing, and they were again articulating that lesson. They saw that Hillel gave his livelihood, as we saw in the beginning, and certainly he even gave his own his own safety for the learning of Torah, and they were articulating that lesson which they had learned from him. And I believe what's coming out throughout the story is that not only did the students see Hillel's self-sacrifice, but God also sees Hillel's self-sacrifice for the learning of Torah, and he actually awards him for this self-sacrifice. How so? By this, I think we will answer some of our questions. First of all, when it says, Yarad alav shelag min hashamayim, that the snow fell from the heavens, God sees how Hillel gives himself and sacrifices himself every day for the study of Torah, and so therefore he awards him in this case that he sends the snow specifically for Hillel. He sends it from heaven, min hashamayim, so that the students would see the self-sacrifice of Hillel, and Hillel would have the opportunity to serve as an example. To answer our other question, why does it say Divrei Elokim Chayim, the words of the living God? Why doesn't it just say Torah? Because I believe it's a reference here, not necessarily to the Torah, but a reference to Hillel. Divrei Elokim Chayim, that Hillel was a living example of dedication to Torah. He was a living example for everyone to see, which is the point of the story. And finally, when Shmaya says to Avtalion, why is it dark in here? It's usually light here. I believe this also encapsulates the reward that Hillel is being given over here, that normally the light would come from the outside, from the natural elements, but here it's Hillel and the lesson which he is bringing into the Beis Medrash, with the lesson which he is teaching the other students and even teaching Shmaya ve'Avtalion, and he is the one in this case who is teaching, he is the one who is enlightening, he is the one bringing the light into the Beis Medrash.